This is Mr. Eugene. Every miserable marriage started with one moment he didn't recognize. A small test he thought was just her being emotional. A pressure point she was applying to see if he'd bend. He bent. She learned. The test worked, so she applied more pressure. He bent again and again. Until one day he woke up in a relationship where he's not a partner, he's controlled. And he has no idea how it happened, because it happened so slowly, so strategically, that he never saw the pattern until it was complete. A relationship doesn't fall apart randomly. It falls apart when a woman successfully takes control through layered pressure. And most men don't realize they're being tested until they've already failed every test, and she's running everything. Today we're examining how women create and escalate pressure tests in relationships, why those tests are designed specifically to gain control over the man, the 7 phases of the control game, from subtle attacks to complete dominance, why what looks like emotional behavior is actually strategic pressure, how she uses gaslighting, shame, and attrition to break his resistance, the boundary drop that sounds like independence but is actually a power move, why every argument isn't about the issue but about who's in charge, how repetition and escalation work together to wear him down, and most critically, why the man who thinks he's being reasonable and accommodating is actually teaching her exactly how to control him. This is not about claiming all women do this. This is not about hating women. This is about identifying a specific pattern of strategic pressure testing that destroys relationships and dominates good men who never recognized what was happening until it was too late. Stay with me. If you've ever felt like you're losing every argument without understanding why, if you've watched your relationship shift until you're not making decisions anymore, this will show you the game you didn't know you were playing, the foundation. Women test men constantly. Let me start with the uncomfortable truth that makes everything else make sense. Women test men constantly, relentlessly, strategically. This isn't occasional behavior. This isn't just insecure women. This is fundamental female psychology applied to relationships. The tests serve specific purposes. Evaluate his strength, measure his boundaries, determine how much she can push, discover if he can be controlled. Most men think the tests are about the surface issue. She's upset about the dishes. She's frustrated about his tone. She's annoyed about him being late. She's mad about what he said. That's what she says it's about. That's not what it's actually about. The dishes don't matter. The tone doesn't matter. Being late doesn't matter. What he said doesn't matter. What matters is how he responds to her pressure. Does he fold? Does he defend himself and then cave? Does he hold firm? Does he recognize he's being tested? Every conflict is a test. Every complaint is pressure. Every emotional reaction is calibration. She's not looking for understanding. She's measuring his limits. She's discovering if he can be controlled. And here's the critical part most men miss. The first test is never the real test. The first test is small, manageable, seemingly reasonable, easy to accommodate. He accommodates. He thinks he's being a good partner, compromising, being flexible, choosing his battles. What he's actually doing is teaching her that pressure works, that if she applies emotional force, he bends, that he can be controlled, so she learns. And she tests again. Slightly bigger pressure, slightly more force, seeing if the pattern holds. He bends again. Now she knows. He's controllable. Now she can build. This is how it starts. Small tests, successful pressure, pattern established. And from there it escalates into a full control game that he doesn't recognize until he's completely dominated. Phase 1, subtle attacks. The destabilization begins. The control game starts with subtle attacks designed to destabilize him psychologically without triggering his defenses. Attack 1, the eye roll. She asks his opinion. He gives it. She rolls her eyes. Not dramatically, just a small gesture, easy to miss or dismiss. But the message is clear. Your opinion is stupid. I don't respect your perspective. Most men let this slide. It's just an eye roll, not worth fighting about. Pick your battles. What they're missing. She just tested whether she can show open disrespect without consequence. She can. He allowed it. Test passed. Attack 2, the tone shift. He's talking, sharing something, explaining his perspective. Normal conversation. Her tone shifts. From engaged to dismissive, from warm to cold, from interested to bored or irritated. The shift is subtle but unmistakable. The message is clear. What you're saying doesn't matter. I'm not interested. You're wasting my time. Most men notice but don't address it. They trail off, stop talking, move on. What they're missing. She just tested whether she can shut him down through emotional withdrawal. She can. He stopped talking. Test passed. Attack 3. The dismissive reaction. He suggests something. A plan, an idea, a preference, a solution. Her reaction is dismissive. A small laugh, a headshake. A, that won't work without explanation. A, we're not doing that, said with finality. The message is clear. Your ideas don't count. I decide what we do. Your input is irrelevant, unless I agree with it. Most men back off. Okay, never mind. What do you want to do? Sure, your way is fine. What they're missing. She just tested whether she can override his preferences without negotiation. She can. He deferred. Test passed. Attack 4. The correction. He says something, makes a statement, shares information. She corrects him. Actually, that's not quite right. Well, technically, that's not exactly what happened. You're remembering it wrong. Sometimes she's right, often she's not. But accuracy isn't the point. The message is clear. I'm the authority. You're wrong. I determine reality. Most men either accept the correction or defend themselves briefly, then drop it to avoid conflict. What they're missing. She just tested whether she can position herself as the authority who corrects him. She can. He either accepted it or fought briefly, then surrendered. Test passed. These subtle attacks are happening constantly, daily, multiple times per day. Each one is small. Each one seems not worth fighting about. Each one is a test. And collectively, they're accomplishing something critical. They're destabilizing his confidence in his own perspective, judgment, and authority. They're establishing that her emotional reactions control the interaction. They're training him to defer to avoid her displeasure. He's being psychologically prepared for larger control moves without realizing it. Phase 2. The gaslighting layer, breaking his confidence in reality. Once the subtle attacks have established that she can pressure him successfully, Phase 2 introduces gaslighting to break his confidence in his own judgment. Here's how it works. He notices the pattern. The eye rolls, the tone shifts, the dismissiveness, the corrections. He's being disrespected. He can feel it. So he addresses it. Hey, when you rolled your eyes just then, that felt disrespectful. Can you not do that? Or, I noticed your tone changed when I was talking. It feels like you're not interested in what I'm saying. Or, you keep dismissing my suggestions without even considering them. I'd like my input to actually matter. He thinks he's communicating, setting a boundary, addressing behavior that bothers him. This is what you're supposed to do in healthy relationships. But watch what happens. Gaslighting response. 1. Deny intent. I didn't roll my eyes. You're imagining things. My tone didn't change. You're being overly sensitive. I'm not dismissing you. I just disagreed. You can't handle any pushback. She denies the behavior happened, reframes his accurate observation as his misperception, makes him question what he clearly saw or heard. Most men second-guess themselves. Maybe I didn't see it clearly. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. Maybe she's right and I'm overreacting. What they're missing. She just tested whether she can make him doubt his own perceptions. She can. He's questioning himself now. Test passed. Gaslighting response. 2. Reframe reality. You're remembering that wrong. What actually happened was different. That's not what I meant. You're twisting my words. I was just joking. You took it the wrong way. She reframes what happened, creates an alternative version where she's innocent and he's misinterpreting, makes her behavior his problem. Most men accept some version of this reframe to end the conflict. Okay, maybe I misunderstood. Sorry for taking it wrong. What they're missing. She just tested whether she can redefine reality to avoid accountability. She can. He accepted her version over his own experience. Test passed. Gaslighting response. 3. Label him as wrong. You're too sensitive. You're looking for problems. You're making this a bigger deal than it is. You always do this. She shifts from the behavior itself to diagnosing what's wrong with him for noticing the behavior. Most men get defensive. I'm not too sensitive. I'm not looking for problems. They argue about whether they're the problem instead of staying focused on her behavior. What they're missing. She just tested whether she can make him defend himself instead of her defending her behavior. She can. He's defending now. Test passed. The gaslighting layer serves a specific purpose. Every time he accurately identifies her controlling behavior, and she successfully makes him question his perception, doubt his judgment, or defend himself instead of holding her accountable, she breaks his confidence a little more. Eventually, he stops trusting himself, stops believing his own perceptions, second guesses everything. And a man who doesn't trust his own judgment is a man who can be controlled completely. Phase 3, shame reinforcement. punishing resistance. Once she's destabilized him through subtle attacks and broken his confidence through gaslighting, Phase 3 introduces shame to punish any remaining resistance. Here's the pattern. He's learned not to fully trust his perceptions, but sometimes he still pushes back, still says no, still holds a boundary, still insists on his preference. When he does, shame gets deployed immediately. Shame attack 1. Selfish label. He wants something for himself, time with friends, a hobby, a purchase, an activity, something that's for him, not for the relationship or family. Her response: "You're so selfish. You only think about yourself. What about what I need? What about the family?" The message is clear. Wanting anything for yourself is selfishness. Good partners sacrifice everything. You're bad for having personal desires. Most men feel guilty. Okay, you're right. I'm being selfish. I'll cancel my plans. You and the family come first. What they're missing. She just tested whether shame can make him abandon his own needs. It can. He just gave up what he wanted to avoid being labeled selfish. Test passed. Shame attack. 2. Sensitivity label. He has an emotional reaction to something. He's hurt, he's frustrated, he's upset. He expresses this. Her response: "You're so sensitive. You're overreacting. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? You need to toughen up." The message is clear. Having feelings is weakness. Real men don't get hurt by things. You're inadequate for having an emotional response. Most men shut down emotionally. You're right. I'm being too sensitive. Sorry for overreacting. They suppress the feeling. What they're missing? She just tested whether shame can make him suppress his emotional reality. It can. He just invalidated his own feelings to avoid being labeled too sensitive. Test passed. Shame attack. 3. Wrong label. He disagrees with her, has a different perspective, a different interpretation, a different preference, a different solution. Her response: "You're wrong. That's not how it is. You don't understand. You're not seeing this clearly. Not I disagree. Not I see it differently. You're wrong," as a definitive fact. The message is clear. When our perspectives differ, mine is right and yours is wrong. I'm the authority on reality. Most men either defend briefly then give up, or just defer immediately. Okay, you're probably right. We'll do it your way. What they're missing? She just tested whether shame about being wrong can make him defer to her perspective. It can. He just abandoned his own judgment to avoid being labeled wrong. Test passed. Shame attack 4, bad partner label. He's not meeting some expectation, not doing enough, not being enough, not giving enough, not showing up enough. Her response: "A good husband would do this. Other men do this for their wives. If you really cared, you'd do this. I shouldn't have to ask." The message is clear. You're failing at being a partner. You're inadequate as a man. You're not measuring up to the standard. Most men try harder, work harder, give more, sacrifice more, prove they're not bad partners. What they're missing? She just tested whether shame about being inadequate can make him increase his output. It can. He just committed to more effort to avoid being labeled a bad partner. Test passed. The shame reinforcement serves a critical purpose. It punishes resistance. Every time he wants something for himself, has feelings, disagrees with her, or doesn't meet her standards, shame gets deployed. And shame is powerful. It makes him feel bad about himself. And people will do almost anything to stop feeling bad about themselves. So he learns. Resistance brings shame. Compliance avoids shame. The path of least pain is giving her what she wants. And that's exactly what she's teaching him. Phase 4. Attrition. Wearing him down mentally. The first 3 phases establish the tools: subtle attacks to destabilize, gaslighting to break confidence, shame to punish resistance. Phase 4 is about using those tools repeatedly in cycles that never resolve until he's mentally worn down. The attrition pattern. Cycle 1. She creates a conflict about something. He responds. She deploys gaslighting and shame. The conflict doesn't resolve. It just ends with him feeling confused and bad about himself. Cycle 2. The same conflict arises again, or a similar conflict. He responds similarly. The same gaslighting and shame. The same non-resolution. The same result. He feels worse. Cycle 3. Again. The same pattern, the same tools, the same outcome. He's starting to feel exhausted by this. Cycle 4 through 40. The cycle repeats, over and over. The same conflicts, the same dynamics, the same tools, the same non-resolution. What's happening psychologically? Each cycle drains him mentally. The confusion from gaslighting, the guilt from shame, The frustration from non-resolution, the exhaustion from fighting battles that never end, all of it accumulates. Eventually, he's so tired of the cycle that he stops engaging, stops pushing back, stops defending himself, stops trying to resolve anything. He just gives in, immediately. Whatever she wants, however she wants to frame it, he accepts it, because fighting it means entering the cycle again. And he's too exhausted for that. This is what attrition accomplishes. It doesn't win through one big victory. It wins through 1,000 small battles that never resolve until he's too tired to fight anymore. She doesn't take control all at once. She earns it through his compliance, born of exhaustion, the attrition strategy in action. Early in the relationship, he pushes back on 80% of her pressure. He fights most battles. He maintains most boundaries. Year 2. He pushes back on 50%. He's learned some battles aren't worth fighting. He picks what he thinks are important ones. Year 5. He pushes back on 20%. Most of the time, it's easier to just go along. He's tired of the cycle. Year 10. He pushes back on 5% or less. He's completely worn down. He gives in almost immediately to avoid the exhaustion of the cycle. This is attrition, slow wearing down of resistance over time through repeated cycles that never resolve. Eventually, he has no fight left. She has complete control. And he arrived there so gradually he didn't realize it was happening. Phase 5. The boundary drop. The power move disguised as independence. Once he's worn down through attrition, Phase 5 introduces what looks like her setting boundaries but is actually a power move establishing her control. Here's what it sounds like. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done adjusting for you. I need to focus on myself now. I'm setting boundaries. I'm not going to keep sacrificing what I need. This sounds healthy, like she's standing up for herself. Setting limits, taking care of her needs, being independent. Men often support this. Good for her. She should have boundaries. She should focus on herself. I want her to be happy. But watch what's actually happening. The boundary drop pattern. She announces a boundary. I'm not doing something anymore. I need something now. I won't tolerate something. The boundary is framed as her growth, her healing, her self-care, her finally standing up for herself after years of giving. But look at what the boundary actually does. It removes something he wanted or needed from the relationship, or it adds something he must now provide, or it changes rules he was operating under. And critically, the boundary is not negotiable. She's not asking. She's announcing. She's not discussing. She's declaring, this is how it is now. Adjust. Examples. Boundary drop. 1. I'm not having sex when I don't feel emotionally connected. This sounds reasonable. But what it means, sex is now conditional on her assessment of emotional connection, which she controls completely. He has no say. His desire is irrelevant. Boundary drop. 2. I need space to process. I won't be responding right away anymore. This sounds healthy, but what it means. She can withdraw whenever she wants. He must accept her unavailability. His need for connection or resolution is irrelevant. Boundary drop. 3. I'm not doing your emotional labor anymore. Figure out your own feelings. This sounds like a reasonable boundary. But what it means, she no longer has to support him emotionally while still expecting him to support her. Asymmetric emotional labor is now the rule. Boundary drop. 4. I'm prioritizing myself now. I'm going to do what I need to do for me. This sounds like self-care. But what it means, her needs come first always. His needs are secondary. She decides priority unilaterally. Every boundary drop follows the same pattern, framed as her growth and self-care. Actually establishes her control and his subordination. Announced, not negotiated. He must adjust to new rules he didn't agree to. And here's the test. If he questions any of these boundaries, if he suggests they should be discussed or negotiated, if he says this doesn't work for him, what happens? She deploys everything from previous phases. You're trying to control me. You don't want me to have boundaries. You want me to sacrifice myself for you. You're being selfish. A good partner would support my growth. Gaslighting, shame, all of it. Until he backs down and accepts the new rule. The boundary drop is a critical phase because it's where control becomes explicit. She's no longer just testing. She's declaring, this is how things are now. Adjust or leave. And most men adjust because they've been worn down and don't recognize this is a power move, not a healthy boundary. Phase 6, the real test. Will he accept the new rules? Once the boundary drop happens, Phase 6 is watching to see if he accepts the new rules she's unilaterally established. This is the real test. Everything before was preparation, building the tools, wearing him down. establishing precedent. But this is where control is won or lost. The test question. Will he accept the new rules? She's announced how things will be now. Sex is conditional on her assessment. She withdraws when she wants space. She doesn't provide emotional support anymore. She prioritizes herself, whatever the new rules are. Now she watches. Does he accept them or does he resist? Scenario 1. He accepts. He adjusts to the new rules. He doesn't fight them. He might not like them, but he complies. When he does this, she knows, I have control. I can establish unilateral rules and he'll accept them. I'm in charge now. The relationship fundamentally shifts at this moment. She's not his partner anymore. She's his authority. She makes rules. He follows them. He often doesn't realize this has happened. He thinks he's being supportive, being flexible, compromising, choosing the relationship over his ego. What he's actually doing is accepting a subordinate position. She governs. He complies. That's the new dynamic. And once this dynamic is established, it expands. More boundary drops, more unilateral rule changes, more control. Because she learned he'll accept it. Scenario 2, he resists. He says, no, I don't accept this boundary. We need to discuss this. This doesn't work for me. I'm not agreeing to these new rules. When he does this, she has a choice. She can negotiate, actually discuss, find a compromise, return to a partnership. Or she can escalate, deploy all previous tools. Gaslighting, shame, attrition, make the cost of resistance so high he gives up. Or she can threaten. If you can't accept my boundaries, maybe we're not compatible. If you won't let me have boundaries, I'll leave. Most men who've reached this phase have been so worn down by previous phases that even when they initially resist, they eventually cave when she escalates or threatens. A few men hold firm, refuse to accept unilateral rule changes, insist on mutual decision-making, maintain a partnership frame. For these men, the relationship either restructures toward actual partnership or it ends because she can't control them. And if control is what she's been building toward, she'll leave or force him to leave. This is the real test. Not the laundry, not the tone, not being late. The real test is, will he accept being controlled? Will he accept a subordinate position in a relationship that should be a partnership? Most men fail this test without knowing they were being tested. They think they're being good partners. They're actually teaching her she can dominate them completely. Phase 7, control outcome. The relationship she's built. If he accepts the new rules, if he passes through all 6 previous phases without recognizing the pattern and stopping it, phase 7 is the outcome, complete control. What control looks like. Decision-making. She makes decisions unilaterally. He implements them. If he suggests alternatives, she vetoes. Final authority is hers, emotional labor. He absorbs her emotions. She doesn't absorb his. If he has needs, he's being too much. If she has needs, he's not doing enough. Time and resources. His time and money are allocated according to her priorities. Her time and money are hers. Asymmetric ownership of household resources, social life. She decides which friends they see, which family events they attend, which social obligations they accept. He goes along. Intimacy. She controls sexual frequency, type, and conditions. Sex happens when she wants it, how she wants it. His desire is irrelevant unless it aligns with hers. Standards. She sets standards for the home, the relationship, his behavior. He's evaluated against her standards. She's not evaluated against his. Conflict. When conflicts arise, her perspective prevails, either immediately or after enough attrition that he gives up. His perspective gets overridden consistently. Boundaries. She can set unilateral boundaries he must accept. He cannot set boundaries she's required to accept. Asymmetric boundary rights. This is what complete control looks like. He lives in a relationship where he's subordinate, where her authority is final, where his role is to comply with her governance while continuing to provide everything she requires. How he feels in a controlled relationship. Exhausted, from years of attrition wearing him down. Confused, from gaslighting making him doubt his own perceptions and judgment. Guilty. From shame conditioning making him feel bad about having needs or preferences. Resentful. From being controlled while providing everything. Numb, from suppressing his own emotional reality to survive the dynamic. Trapped. From feeling like he can't leave but can't stay like this. Small. From being made to feel wrong, selfish, inadequate, too sensitive, consistently. This is the outcome of the control game. A man who started as an equal partner, reduced to a controlled subordinate who provides everything while having authority over nothing. And the devastating part, he doesn't understand how it happened, because it happened through thousands of small tests over years. Each one seemed minor, each one seemed not worth fighting about. Each one was actually building the structure that eventually imprisoned him. Why most men don't see it? The camouflage. The control game succeeds because it's camouflaged as normal relationship dynamics. Camouflage. 1. Framed as emotion, not strategy. All the controlling behavior is framed as an emotional reaction. She's upset, she's hurt, she's frustrated, she's overwhelmed. She's just expressing her feelings. Men think they're dealing with emotions. They're actually dealing with strategic pressure. What looks like frustration is often calculated escalation. What sounds like hurt feelings is often testing a response. What appears to be emotional is often instrumental. She's not confused. She's testing how far she can push you. This doesn't happen by accident. It's built layer by layer. But because it's framed as emotion, he responds with empathy and accommodation instead of recognizing he's being pressured and tested. Camouflage 2, disguised as reasonable. Every demand sounds reasonable when presented individually. Can you just do the dishes? Reasonable. I need you to listen when I'm upset. Reasonable. I'm setting a boundary about my needs. Reasonable. Can you be on time? Reasonable. I need space to process. Reasonable. Each individual request sounds fine, but look at the pattern. Look at the accumulation. Look at how each reasonable request is actually establishing control. The reasonableness is camouflage. It makes him feel unreasonable for resisting. If each individual thing is reasonable, what's my problem? It must be me. Camouflage 3, positioned as growth. The control is framed as her growth and healing. I'm learning to set boundaries. I'm prioritizing myself. I'm no longer sacrificing my needs. I'm standing up for myself. I'm healing from my past. This sounds healthy. Men support this. Good for her. But the growth narrative is camouflage for control expansion. Every time she grows, his autonomy shrinks. Every boundary she sets removes his authority. Every time she prioritizes herself, his needs become less important. Her growth is actually his subordination, but it's packaged as positive development. Camouflage 4, justified through his inadequacy. Any resistance he offers gets reframed as proof he's inadequate. You're too sensitive. You're selfish. You're not supportive. You can't handle a strong woman. You're threatened by my growth. You're controlling. The resistance itself becomes evidence he's the problem. If he was adequate, he wouldn't resist reasonable requests, emotional expression, or her growth. This camouflage is brilliant. It makes resistance prove inadequacy, which makes more resistance seem like more inadequacy, until he stops resisting to stop proving he is inadequate. Because of these layers of camouflage, most men never recognize the control game until it's complete. They think they're navigating normal relationship challenges. They're actually being systematically dominated. The repetition pattern. Why it keeps happening. One of the clearest signs you're in the control game is repetition, the same conflicts, the same dynamics, the same outcomes, over and over. If it were random emotional behavior, it would vary. Different issues, different patterns, different results. But it doesn't vary, it repeats, precisely, predictably. The same conflict about dishes, the same conflict about tone, the same conflict about time management, the same conflict about his family, the same conflict about money, the same conflict about intimacy. Not just similar, the same trigger, the same escalation, the same tools deployed, the same non-resolution, the same outcome. Why does this happen? Because the conflicts aren't about the surface issue. They're about control, and control testing requires repetition. She's testing. Can I still control him? Does the pattern still work? Has anything changed? The repetition serves a purpose. It maintains control. Every time the cycle repeats and he complies, control is reinforced. Every time he bends to the same pressure, she confirms she still has power. The conflicts don't resolve because resolution isn't the goal. Control is the goal. Resolved conflicts don't test control. Repeated conflicts do. And here's what men miss. If the same conflict keeps happening, and you keep trying to fix the surface issue and it keeps not working, the surface issue isn't the real issue. The real issue is control. And until you address that, the conflicts will continue, regardless of how many times you do the dishes, adjust your tone, manage your time better, or whatever the surface issue is. It keeps happening because that's the point. The repetition is the control mechanism, not a failure to resolve. The escalation pattern. The first test is never the real test. Another critical element of the control game is escalation. The first test is small, minor pressure, easily accommodated, seemingly reasonable. He passes the test by complying. She learns pressure works. The second test is slightly bigger, slightly more pressure, slightly less reasonable. He passes again by complying. She confirms the pattern. The third test is bigger still, and so on. Each test slightly more demanding than the last. Why escalation matters. If she started with the big tests, the unreasonable demands, the obvious power moves, he'd recognize what's happening and resist. But she doesn't start there. She starts small, builds slowly. Each escalation is small enough that it doesn't trigger alarm bells. Just slightly more than last time, still within range of what seems manageable. By the time she's making obviously unreasonable demands and blatant power moves, he's so conditioned to comply that he does it anyway. Or he's so worn down from attrition that he doesn't have the fight left to resist. The escalation pattern is why men don't see the control game until it's complete, because they never see the full picture at once. They only see each individual step. And each step seems small enough to not matter. But look at where he started versus where he ended. The distance is enormous. He went from an equal partner to a controlled subordinate. But he got there through 10,000 tiny steps, each one small enough to seem insignificant. The first test is never the real test. The first test is to see if he'll bend at all. Once he bends to small pressure, she can escalate to medium pressure. Once he bends to medium pressure, she can escalate to large pressure. And so on, until she's applying massive pressure and he's bending completely. This is why every time you fold, she learns exactly how to control you. Each compliance teaches her. She can apply this much pressure and he'll bend. So next time she applies slightly more and he bends again. And she learns she can apply even more. The escalation is built on his compliance. Every yes to a small test enables a bigger test. Until he's saying yes to things he would have found outrageous at the beginning, what to do? Breaking the control game. If you recognize this pattern in your relationship, you have choices. Choice 1. Continue complying. Continue bending to pressure. Continue being controlled. Accept a subordinate position. Many men choose this, consciously or unconsciously. It's easier than fighting. The relationship is stable, even if it's unfulfilling, better than being alone. The cost is your autonomy, dignity, and self-respect. You live as a controlled person in a relationship that should be a partnership. But some men decide this is an acceptable price. Choice 2. Recognize and name the pattern. Stop treating each conflict as being about the surface issue. Recognize the control game. Start naming it. You're testing me right now. This isn't about the dishes. You're applying pressure to see if I'll bend. I see the pattern. This disrupts the game. The game depends on him not seeing it. Once he sees it and names it, she can't run it the same way. She'll likely deny. She'll gaslight. She'll shame. I'm not testing you. You're being paranoid. You're making this up. You're the controlling one for saying this. Hold firm. I'm not debating whether the pattern exists. I see it. I'm naming it. It stops now. Choice 3. Stop complying with pressure. When she applies pressure, stop bending. She creates conflict. You refuse to engage in the cycle. She deploys gaslighting and shame. You don't accept it. She escalates. You remain calm and unmoved. This is incredibly difficult after years of conditioning to comply, but it's necessary. Every time you stop complying, you break the pattern. She learns pressure doesn't work anymore. The control game loses power. She will escalate dramatically when you first stop complying. Expect this, the extinction burst. She'll apply maximum pressure to get you back to complying. Hold through it. Don't bend, don't engage, don't defend, just hold firm. Eventually, the escalation stops because it's not working, and she has to choose restructure toward partnership or leave. Choice 4, require mutual decision-making. Stop accepting unilateral decisions. Stop accepting boundary drops you didn't agree to. Stop accepting new rules established without your input. When she announces a decision or boundary, respond. That's not how this works. We make decisions together. If this is your boundary, we need to discuss how it affects both of us and whether we can both accept it. If she insists her boundaries are non-negotiable and you must accept them, respond. Your boundaries are your choice, but whether I stay in a relationship with those boundaries is my choice. If you're establishing unilateral rules I must follow, you're not looking for partnership. You're looking for control. I don't accept that. This forces the issue. Either she returns to a partnership frame, or the control game becomes explicit and you can address it directly. Choice 5. Exit. If she can't or won't stop the control game, if she requires your subordination to stay in the relationship, If she's unwilling to restructure toward a partnership, you leave. This is the hardest choice, but sometimes necessary. Better to be alone than to be controlled. Better to have autonomy without a relationship than a relationship without autonomy. Leaving is not a failure. Staying in a relationship where you're controlled is a failure. A failure to value yourself. A failure to require mutual respect. A failure to protect your own dignity. Final thoughts. Every argument is about who's in charge. What you think is conflict is actually calibration. She's not looking for understanding. She's measuring your limits. Every argument isn't about the issue. It's about who's in charge. The relationship shifts the moment she realizes you won't push back. This isn't emotional behavior. This is strategic pressure. Look, I've been there. In a relationship where I was being tested constantly and didn't see it, where small conflicts repeated endlessly, where I kept accommodating, thinking I was being reasonable, where I woke up one day and realized I wasn't making any decisions anymore. She was running everything. And I had no idea how I got there. The control game works because it's invisible while it's happening. You only see it clearly in retrospect, or when someone names the pattern for you. So I'm naming it for you now. If the same conflicts keep repeating, if you feel like you're always wrong, if you're constantly accommodating, if she's establishing unilateral rules you must follow, if you've gone from partner to controlled subordinate, you're in the control game, and you need to decide. Am I accepting this, or am I breaking this pattern? Because it doesn't get better on its own. It only escalates more tests, more pressure, more control, until you either break free or break completely. You deserve partnership, not subordination. You deserve mutual respect, not unilateral control. You deserve to be an equal, not a controlled subject. And if the person you're with can't relate to you as an equal, if she requires your subordination to feel secure, if she can't stop testing and pressuring and controlling, you deserve to find someone who can, or to be alone rather than controlled. The control game only works if you keep playing. Stop bending. Stop accepting pressure. Stop treating each conflict as being about the surface issue when the real issue is power. See the pattern. Name the pattern. Break the pattern. Before it breaks you completely, drop a comment if you've recognized this pattern. Which phase are you in? Are you going to keep complying, or are you breaking the game? Subscribe for analysis that names patterns you're living but haven't had words for stop being controlled, reclaim your partnership, or reclaim your freedom.